Welcome back, focused learners. Today on The Explainer, we're breaking down a massively complex, decades-long shadow war over nuclear capabilities in the Middle East. As we sketch this out for you today, we'll trace the history, the covert operations, and analyze a fascinating documentary's speculative projection of a 2025 to 2026 global conflict. Okay, let's dive right into this. On the agenda today, we're starting with the nuclear monopoly and early precedents in Iraq and Syria. Then we map out the covert shadow war, dig into sabotage, the collapse of diplomacy, and finally, we'll explore that dramatic 2025 to 2026 scenario. Section 1. The nuclear monopoly, or Israel's strategic safety net. Let's get into it. So, to really understand this current shadow war, we actually have to rewind all the way back to the 1960s. Israel developed an unacknowledged military nuclear program deep in the Negev desert at the Dimona plant, and this was designed as their ultimate safety net. Which brings us to the absolute core doctrine driving this whole story, preventing a nuclear domino effect in the Middle East at all costs. The foundational fear here is that, if one hostile neighbor gets an atomic bomb, a rapid chain reaction is going to follow. Imagine countries like Egypt, Turkey, or Saudi Arabia immediately rushing to get their own. So, to prevent this, Israel and the U.S. adopted a stance of absolute zero tolerance for regional nuclear proliferation. Moving on to Section 2, precedents in Iraq and Syria, and the first preventative strikes. Right, so before Iran became the primary focus, Israel had to deal with early nuclear threats, and these actually set a massive precedent for military action. Back in 1981, intelligence showed Iraq was building a nuclear reactor at Assarak. Diplomacy failed, so Israeli F-16s dropped 16 tons of bombs, putting a giant dent in Saddam Hussein's program. Fast forward to 2007, and a super similar situation pops up with the Al-Kibar facility in Syria under Bashar al-Assad. But how did they actually prove Syria was building a reactor? Well, it involved some incredible spycraft. Seriously, this is straight out of a movie. March 2007, the head of the Syrian Atomic Energy Commission is staying in a Vienna hotel. Step 1, Mossad uses an agent to chat him up at the hotel bar, luring him out of his room. Step 2, while he's distracted downstairs, you can practically picture our little stick figure guy sipping his drink, agents infiltrate the room and hack his phone, which he luckily left behind. And step 3, they extract undeniable, hard evidence. We're talking actual photographs of the Syrian reactor built as a total clone of a North Korean facility, with North Korean scientists literally in the frame. This intel directly led to the airstrike that destroyed it. Okay, Section 3. The covert shadow war and the shift to Iran. So, following the 1979 Islamic Revolution, Iran aggressively resumed its nuclear research, but they hid their centrifuges deep underground across these highly fortified facilities. Now, the magic number here on the board is 90%. Enriching uranium to 3.67%, that is totally normal for civilian power, which Iran, for the record, always claimed was their sole goal. But if you just keep spinning those centrifuges, you can enrich that exact same uranium up to 90%. And that is the critical threshold for a nuclear weapon, a threshold Israeli and U.S. intelligence were absolutely convinced Iran was secretly pushing toward. Which brings us to Section 4, sabotage and cyber weapons, and slowing the program down. Because these Iranian facilities were buried way too deep for standard airstrikes, Israel and the U.S. had to shift tactics to a covert shadow war just to buy some time. Enter the first known cyber weapon, Stuxnet. This was a digital masterpiece. Since they couldn't just hack in from the outside, step 1. They tricked an authorized European engineer into unknowingly bringing the virus inside the Natanz facility on a physical drive. Step 2. The virus just lay dormant until it found exactly 984 centrifuges, a very specific Iranian setup. And step 3, the absolute genius part. The virus feeds fake, completely normal readings to the human operators looking at the screens, while physically making the centrifuges spin out of control until they destroy themselves. It was brilliant, and it delayed the Iranian program by a year and a half. Now, what's really interesting about this next detail is the 1.6-second data delay. Cyber weapons weren't the only tactic here. Israel also allegedly orchestrated a series of assassinations of key Iranian nuclear scientists to disrupt their knowledge base. The most famous was Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, the mastermind of the program. Because of his heavy security, Mossad supposedly used a 1-ton robotic machine gun hidden in a parked van, operated remotely from Tel Aviv via satellite. That 1.6-second data delay meant artificial intelligence had to be used to adjust the shots in real time. Literally unbelievable precision. But again, these tactics, they were really only delaying the inevitable. All right, Section 5, the collapse of diplomacy, the JCPOA, and what came after. Realizing that, blowing up centrifuges and taking out scientists was only buying them a few years here and there, the international community tried a diplomatic solution back in 2015, the JCPOA. But this agreement was built on incredibly fragile ground because of polar opposite perspectives. Let's be totally objective here. From Iran's perspective, this was a clear path to lift crippling economic sanctions and finally trade freely again. But from Israel's perspective, it was a fatally flawed deal. Why? Because the deal only covered the nuclear program. It completely ignored Iran's development of ballistic missiles and its massive funding of regional proxy groups like Hezbollah and Hamas. Israel really wanted to prove Iran was lying about its past weapons research. So in 2018, Mossad executed a completely daring heist right into Iran. Agents infiltrated a secret warehouse, used 2,500-degree blowtorches to crack open 16 safes, and stole 55,000 pages of secret nuclear archives in the dead of night. This massive pile of physical proof was then used to convince the US that Iran just couldn't be trusted. And man, this triggered a massive domino effect. May 2018, the US withdraws from the JCPOA, and Iran resumes enrichment. Then the whole region basically exploded. October 2023, Hamas attacks Israel. September 2024, Hezbollah's pagers start exploding in Lebanon, leading to intense Israeli bombing. And by December 2024, the Assad regime in Syria had fallen. Strategically, what does that mean? It means Syrian air defenses were gone, theoretically opening up a clear, completely undetected flight path for Israeli jets straight to Tehran. Moving to Section 6, the 2025-2026 scenario. We're stepping away from established history now and into the documentary's highly dramatized speculative projection of the future. So the crucial point here is how fast this hypothetical escalation just spirals completely out of control. Here is the documentary's timeline. Back-channel talks in Oman fail. Then, June 2025, Israel launches a massive surprise attack on Iranian air defenses and scientists. Iran immediately retaliates with ballistic missiles. Shortly after that, the US joins in with Operation Midnight Hammer. Even after a brief pause, a second massive strike hits in February 2026, targeting Iranian leadership directly. This leads to a bloody, chaotic regional war until a fragile ceasefire is finally announced in April 2026. Now, you might be wondering, why did the US have to get directly involved in this hypothetical scenario? Well, because of Fordo. Fordo is this highly secure Iranian enrichment facility buried beneath roughly 70 to 80 meters of solid rock. Israeli munitions simply can't reach it. The only weapons capable of penetrating that deep are massive American bunker buster bombs, dropped exclusively from US B-2 stealth bombers. So in this scenario, US military might wasn't just helpful, it was a physical requirement to neutralize those deepest threats. And the global fallout in this simulation? Absolutely devastating. Iran retaliates across the Gulf. They shut down the Strait of Hormuz, which blocks a huge chunk of the world's oil shipments. Global fuel prices completely soar. But honestly, the most chilling reality here, even after an unprecedented bombardment by the world's most advanced militaries, Iran's core nuclear knowledge survives. I mean, you can destroy the physical centrifuges, sure, but you can't just bomb the scientific equations out of the scientists' heads. Which leaves us staring at one final, very provocative question. Without a comprehensive diplomatic agreement, can uncontrolled nuclear proliferation in the Middle East actually be stopped by military force alone? It's a massive, high-stakes question where the fate of the global economy and literally the price you pay at the pump hangs in the balance. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and as always, keep learning.